Hello class, my name is Brannon DuBose, and for my research presentation I am going to talk about the KC-46 and specifically the delays that were related to the debris that was discovered in various areas of the aircraft. I'm quite intimate with the program. I have been on the KC-46 program for about 3 years now, and ever since it has arrived at McConnell it's become my baby, and we're just going to dive right after it, and I hope that you enjoy my unique insights into this touchy subject. So, going over the overview, the debris that was discovered, we're going to talk about that as they relate to the 10 operational management principles, and specifically the failures as they relate to the 10 OM principles, and then we'll have a short summary. So, the debris discovered, were nuts, washers, bolts, little rubber flakes, broken clamps, that sort of thing. Those were all along the interior panel walls. We also found a screwdriver. We found a wrench. I specifically found a 9/16 wrench myself that was jammed into a wire bundle. How or why it got there, who knows? But we found it during our acceptance inspection. But the biggest thing we found was a ladder inside of a fuel tank. We drained this fuel tank to perform some inspections, and boom, there's a ladder inside there. This jet flew with a ladder inside of a fuel tank. All of this debris resulted in 5 weeks of delivery delays for Boeing, and Boeing ended up having to send out teams to inspect all of the aircraft that had already been delivered. They inspected all the aircraft that were sitting at the tarmacs up at Boeing and Everett, and they had to spend millions of dollars to do this, as well as revitalize, several programs and processes that they have in place up at Boeing. They've really been working hard to correct this, but it's not a change that's going to happen overnight. It's a cultural shift, and that takes time. It takes time and effort and commitment. So, with that, let's talk about the 10 operational management principles specifically. So Boeing, under traditional circumstances, is considered pretty much a top player in their field, and the aviation industry. They do very good work. They do quality things, and they're innovative, and they set the golden standard on inventory management and other things like that. But when it comes to handling abnormal circumstances, that they have failed. And for the 10 OM principles that we discussed for this class, we can relate easily 7 to Boeing and some specific failures that contributed to all the debris that we found. So, with that, we're going to talk about production. Specifically, Boeing, through their failures, they produced an aircraft that they were building before all of the design elements had been cemented, and the testing was not yet done. And through all of this, they violated all 7 of ONO's areas of waste, and that can be seen through overproduction, queues where aircraft were waiting to be worked on, transportation unnecessarily of the goods, from one end of the airfield to the other, excess inventory of the aircraft. They had more than 30 planes sitting on the tarmac waiting to be worked on at various stages of production. It's crazy. The motion, individuals having to perform all this extra work. That's over processing, and the defective product. They end up having to go back and rework several aircraft because of wiring deficiencies, and all of these production faults could have been avoided if they had worked all this out before beginning production. And that's where Boeing failed in the production side of things. And this graphic explains through an illustration that was put out by the Government Acquisitions Office for April of 2019, where the different aircraft were in the various stages. The 52 aircraft on the screen, and you can see where 7 are in holding facilities, storage, waiting to be worked. Quality. So in this way, Boeing failed to utilize a quality good to improve profitability. They fell short. And it cost them millions of dollars by failing to adequately utilize several processes and to produce a quality product. It cost them millions of dollars in revenue, and the Air Force is actually withholding 20% of the cost for a $150 million airplane times however many aircraft until the Air Force is confident that Boeing has these issues resolved. The total quality management principles that were in place were not set to handle the conditions that Boeing had set for itself, where these aircraft were put in storage, in various stages of production, and then were picked up where they had left off, assuming, presumably, and things just didn't quite work out the way that they wanted to because they didn't have solid processes in place. So, processes. Boeing failed to develop and manage a process for handling the aircraft that were stored in these various states of production. When they were reintegrating them back into the production line, they failed to recognize various issues. And when aircraft were presumably ready to be delivered, they failed to have a solid process in place for pre-delivery inspections that would have caught all of these issues that we found during our acceptance inspections. And additionally, they had a failed tool management system. If they had a quality tool management system, then how would a ladder have gone lost? Layout. Here in this illustration, you can see where the Boeing assembly plant is at the north, as illustrated, at the north end of Payne Field. And then you have the Boeing Delivery Center, and then the Boeing Modification Center. All KC-46 aircraft are based on the 767, which are assembled at the Boeing assembly line. Where all the aircraft are wired, prepped, ready to be sent down as a 767 to the Boeing Modification Center to be militarized with all the military-grade equipment that the KC-46 possesses, and that's what makes it a KC-46. The boom, the hose and drogue system, all the aerial refueling components, and the different defense systems that it has on board, that is all done at the Boeing Modification Center. Well, due to delays between the Boeing assembly plant before arriving at the Boeing Modification Center, there were over 30 aircraft in queue ready to be worked on. And some aircraft would be sent into the Boeing Modification Center, get worked on a little bit, and then put back in storage, or they pick up another one while they were waiting on these engineering decisions to be made and implemented. And it was a lot of wasted effort. And the layout, from the Boeing assembly plant to the Modification Center back to the Boeing Delivery Center is wasted. And the layout was not conducive for storage because they were facing these abnormal conditions of having to store 30 plus aircraft. Human resources. Boeing has great teams in place. Great teams. I've never met a Boeing engineer, field service representative, or production line worker that I was not thoroughly impressed with, and that I felt that they were not passionate about their job. But human error does occur, and I feel that Boeing failed to integrate an ergonomic human interface system that would have helped facilitate quality accountability of tools and fraud prevention. If they had integrated quality systems to help their team members manage FOD and tool accountability, then an aircraft wouldn't have flown with a ladder and fuel tank. Inventory. Boeing failed at inventory because they had an excess of it. They had 30 of these planes sitting there ready to be worked on. But they also failed to accurately perform interval tool inventory checks that would have forced the paper trail to be tracked down of where these various tools were that were lost. Tools on a flight line don't just go missing. They just don't. Because there are tool accountability systems. But how lost tools are managed and the quality of those systems vary. So there's only people can presume about what happened, but if interval tool audits were performed, then it would have forced these tools to be tracked down. You know, if a tool is quote unquote missing, then there has to be a paper trail. And tools don't just go missing; they must be found. So, or if it's broken, you know. Scheduling. The mass production schedules are, you know, they set the stage for efficient production management. And Boeing failed to have quality plans in place to work on the aircraft that were stored on the flight line. All these planes in this picture you see were worked on the parking pad, just sitting there. You know, various things are being done to these aircraft, and this is where the majority of errors occurred because the quality management systems just weren't there, you know, for these aircraft that were in varying stages of production. Scheduling. The scheduling issues that affected the MPS are what resulted in these aircraft having to be stored there, and ultimately led to an aircraft flying in a fuel tank, a ladder flying in a fuel tank of an aircraft. Summary. Boeing has lost confidence of the Air Force. They have spent millions repairing their mistakes, and they will spend years earning back the trust of the Air Force. And the 10 operational management decisions are utilized properly throughout most of Boeing. But when it came to dealing with these abnormal conditions, they failed. And they failed spectacularly. And it'll take a long time for them to recover from that in the eyes of the Air Force and from many of the maintainers that work on these aircraft. And then got my references. And the end.